so this is my spoiler discussion of the Madman's Daughter trilogy by Megan Shepherd. I'm going to be talking about all 3 books in the trilogy, but I'm only going to be talking about the spoilers like one book at a time. So when I'm talking about the first book, I'm not going to spoil the subsequent books. So if you've only read 1 or 2 books in the series, you can stop after I finish talking about the last book that you read, so you're not spoiled for the sequels. But if you have read all 3 books, just watch the whole video. If you haven't read all 3 books, I did do a non-spoiler review of the trilogy, so that will be linked below, so go watch that if you haven't read the books. And then once you read the books, come back and watch this video and we can talk about all of the crazy stuff that went down in this trilogy. Alright, so let's get started and talk about The Madman's Daughter. I really liked this book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I found it so dark and twisted, but I loved it. It was so fascinating. I am a biochemistry major in school, so I'm really interested in science, although, I mean, we know this book goes like really far with the science thing into the dark places of science, but I still found it very fascinating. I could connect with Juliet. She has that curiosity about science, but she is kind of scared of the dangers and she's constantly battling between those 2 ideas, and I could kind of connect to her on that because I was like fascinated by all the, you know, weird science stuff that went on in this book, but I was also kind of like, why am I so interested in this? This is not okay. But I think that was kind of the goal of the book. Be that sort of thing where you know you shouldn't look, but you want to. That kind of thing. And I think this book did that very, very well. I guess we can start talking about Juliet. I was kind of surprised by her character, like at the beginning of the book, how ruthless she was whenever she like cut the guy's, you know, wrists, and then she like killed the rabbit. I don't know, I didn't really expect her to be like that. I don't know, you don't see a lot of girl main characters, especially set in this time period, that are like that. So I thought it was a really cool setup to her character and to show that, you know, she's not your normal girl. She definitely has a lot of darkness within her. And then we get Montgomery as a character that's introduced in the beginning, and I really liked him from the beginning. Like, whenever he was first introduced, I really, really liked him. So a little skeptical about Balthazar. I was like, I don't really know about him. He seemed, I don't know, obviously he seemed really strange. But of course, you know, I grew to love him throughout the book. But at the beginning, I was a little hesitant. But I loved Montgomery. Loved the connection that him and Juliet had. And I loved his interactions with Juliet in the beginning. So yeah, I really enjoyed the characters. And the writing was really awesome for me. It totally captivated me. I couldn't stop reading. You know, especially like when they got to the island, I was like, I've got to figure this out, you know. And then we get Edward on the trip to the island. He intrigued me so much, like him with that picture. And for some reason, I was like, that picture is going to be of Juliet. Like, and I thought they were going to be able to see it as soon as they pulled it out. I thought it was going to be like, oh my God, this is a picture of me. Like, how did you get this, you know? But we didn't know what it was until like the end of the book. I was really intrigued by Edward's character. I did like him at first, but I was super skeptical of him. I just kind of had a bad feeling about him. I mean, he was charming, but I was kind of aggravated that he was introduced in a way because I liked Montgomery so much, and I don't know, I didn't really like her becoming interested in Edward, although I found his character really interesting. I was just like, I don't know. Her dad was so weird, and like whenever he basically, you know, tried to drown Edward at first, I was like, okay, this is not good. Like, her dad is, you know, he's gone off the deep end. There's no coming back. He's crazy. Found out what her dad's actually doing on this island, which was really insane. I knew something was wrong with these people and her dad had something to do with it, but the extent of what it was, and that he was making human-like creatures out of different animals, that is so crazy. And I didn't expect it to be that far. I didn't expect it to go that far. It just really freaked me out, but fascinated me at the same time. Like I said, you know, when Juliet was sleeping and there was the screams in the night from the animals that he was experimenting on, I was genuinely freaked out. It was just an uncomfortable thing to read, but you couldn't stop reading. And so I found that to be a really cool part of this book. Then we find out that Edward is the beast that's killing all of these people. So I knew something was wrong with him, and right before we found that out, I was kind of like, it's Edward, you know, it's Edward, it's gotta be. So I thought that was a really cool twist. I love the twists that are in this book. I think they were done really well, and they all pretty much surprised me. I didn't think it was predictable. Still at the end of the book, I was still Team Montgomery, even though we found out that he had a hand in Alice's creation and that he helped her father. I think it kind of brought him and her a little bit closer, although they didn't know all of each other's secrets yet, but I still think it brought them a little closer because Montgomery was touched by that darkness just like Juliet was. But the ending of the first book, I was just like, oh my gosh, Montgomery pushed her off and like, you're going by yourself. My heart was torn out. I was so sad. I was like, are you kidding me? You can't do that. And I was really sad. That really shocked me. So I had to pick up the second book right away. So now we're getting into Her Dark Curiosity. Again, I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. So in this book, we have Edward coming back and being the Whitechapel wolf or whatever. I really did kind of believe that he died in the first book, and whenever they had these killings, I was like, well, they're kind of making it obvious that it's Edward, you know, with the 3 claw marks. But then at the same time, I was like, what if it's Juliet in some weird way? Like, I knew that it wasn't, but I knew that it was also inspired by Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So I was like, what if it's Juliet that's like turning into this creature, because we know now that she was operated on by her father as a child, so maybe something's happening with her. But no, it was just Edward. I found that whole storyline to be very interesting. Like I said, I was always kind of on Montgomery's side, Team Montgomery, I guess you could say, but I was very fascinated by Edward's character. I was really interested in the dynamics between Edward and Juliet. Especially in this book, Juliet really starts questioning her sanity. He has this fine line between her good side and her bad side, and I really started being very concerned for her whenever she considered using Sharky, like vivisecting Sharky to get whatever she needed for her medicine or whatever. I was like, no, you are not operating on Sharky. If you go there, you are never coming back from that, and I am never going to like you again, because how dare you, how could you do that? But she didn't. Sharky survived, and I really enjoyed the addition of Sharky. I think it gave sort of a lightheartedness to the story. I really loved Lucy's character in this book. She's one of my favorite characters of this trilogy, and I love the development that she goes through, and I love her story arc. I'm really glad that Juliet was honest with her and told her everything that was happening. And Lucy, you know, took it in stride. You know, she did freak out a little bit, but she was like, okay, let's do this, you know, let's figure this out, let's save Edward. Although I was thoroughly shocked whenever Juliet slept with Edward. I did not expect that, you know. I thought they were gonna like make out and stuff, but I didn't think she would go that far. And I was kind of torn about it. Like, I was kind of glad that the author went there with it, because not a lot of authors do, especially in YA. They usually don't go that far with it, especially with like a one-night stand sort of deal. I kind of like that the author went there, because it's not that common, especially with a character like Edward. I mean, he's so dangerous. But at the same time, I was like, oh no, because I always had Montgomery in the back of my head, and I knew that he was going to come back. But I think it just added a layer to her character and a layer to the complexity. I kind of liked that it was done, but at the same time, I don't think it was absolutely necessary. The Beast was totally freaky. Like, whenever he would take over Edward and like talk to Juliet, like at that masquerade party, she's like, oh, so creepy, so creepy. I did kind of get aggravated with Juliet, because she would like talk back to him, and she had to constantly remind herself not to listen to him, not to listen to him, which I understand because of all the stuff with her father, and the Beast was kind of playing on that. But she would listen to him too much and let him talk, and I'm like, don't let him talk, just chain him or stab him or something, but don't let him talk. But I mean, she finally did in the whole greenhouse scene, and that scene stressed me out, because I was like, where is Montgomery? Where is he? Montgomery was a little aggravating in this book, because he seemed that he wasn't accepting Juliet for who she was, and he mentioned a lot of times, you know, once you're cured, you won't be abnormal anymore. Choose to be like your mother, and it's like he wasn't accepting her for who she is. But I think he was just really trying to be sort of a light in her life, and really trying to show her the brighter side of things. Like, you can choose to be happy, you can choose to put this darkness behind you. And I think he had really good intentions. I think he kind of went about it the wrong way. Some of the things he said were really kind of harsh. But yeah, I found the whole storyline of Newcastle to be very interesting, and how he, you know, was actually part of the Kingsmen and all of that, and he had something to do with it, and then he's the one that killed the professor. And like I said, these books are pretty good with surprising me and not being predictable. So I knew there was something questionable about the professor's death, but I didn't know what it was. But I thought the Newcastle edition was really cool. And then towards the end, we get Juliet's sort of almost, I don't know if I'd call it a breakdown, but whenever she kills all of the guys with the rats, and then she tries to kill Newcastle with that chemical that melted his plate or whatever he had on, that was intense. Like, she went to such a dark place, and I was like, I don't know if she's coming back from this. And I was surprised that Montgomery kind of let her do it, although he didn't really want to. I was surprised that he like kind of went along with it, but I think as much as he tried to conceal it, he has that darkness in him, just like Juliet. Juliet's a little bit different because she thinks the darkness comes from her father, whereas Montgomery doesn't have like a family relationship to her father, but he was there and he helped her father do all the disgusting things that he did. I mean, he did a lot of questionable things as well. So yeah, that scene was really gruesome, but kind of neat at the same time. I mean, I know that's so terrible, but I really enjoy the thought-provoking ideas in these books, especially the second one. Like I said, you know, the fine line between curiosity and madness and science experimentation and morality. I thought those were great thought-provoking ideas. Juliet had a lot of internal struggle in this book. It got a little aggravating at times because I felt like she kind of kept repeating it over and over again. She kind of aggravated me a little in this book, but I understand she had a lot going on in her head, and I mean, she definitely had reason for being confused and having this struggle. Now, moving on to the final book. Love that all of these books are in different settings and they're all inspired by different stories. I think that was a really, really cool aspect to this trilogy, and I love that this one was inspired by Frankenstein because I've actually read Frankenstein, unlike the two other stories that the books were inspired by. But I really like seeing the parallels to Frankenstein in this book. But I gave the third book 4 out of 5 stars. It was my least favorite of the trilogy, but I still really enjoyed it. I felt like this one wasn't as dramatic as the first two. There wasn't as much going on. I mean, there was still a lot going on with getting introduced to these new people at Elizabeth's manor or house or whatever, getting introduced to all of her servants and stuff. Again, you know something is up with these people. Like, there's something going on. Very strange, very weird. Has a really strong ominous feeling in the beginning. And then Hensley, like, totally freaked me out, and I knew something was wrong with him. And I kind of figured, you know, as soon as he was introduced that he was, like, brought back from the dead, especially because it described him as being like an old man in a child's body. It's like, yeah, he's been alive for a long time. And again, at the end of the third book, I thought Edward was a goner. I thought he was done, but he wasn't, and he made it on to the third book. I really enjoyed him and Lucy kind of together. I didn't really expect that. I thought Lucy was going to kind of like him, like in the second book, but I didn't think he would return the feelings, but he kind of did a little bit in the third book. But I thought it was cool how Edward kind of got into the beast's thoughts and realized that he could be cured by like taking out that part of his brain or whatever. How he came to be with the mix of rabies and malaria. Like, it's so crazy, but really cool at the same time. Knew he wasn't going to stay dead. I mean, especially with the story being inspired by Frankenstein, I figured something would happen with that. Especially whenever she was describing Lucy as not being too sad about it and all of that. And I knew something was going to go wrong since she was doing all this stuff with Edward and Lucy, bringing him back, like, the night before her wedding. It's like, this is totally going to ruin your wedding. Something's going to go horribly wrong. I mean, you can't just bring someone back from the dead and then expect to get married the next day and have a happily ever after. I mean, that scene of bringing him back was so intense but gruesome but fascinating at the same time. A lot of this series has a lot of gruesome parts and really detailed scenes. But they're written beautifully, and I really did not expect Edward to kind of be himself after he was brought back. I thought he was going to be kind of zombie-like. I don't know if you've seen the 3rd season of the TV show American Horror Story. I thought he was kind of going to be like a Kyle character, like kind of be like Kyle was. He wasn't. I mean, I know we had Hensley as an example, but that was done so long ago, and I mean, Lucy and Juliet didn't really know what they were doing. But I was surprised by how well it turned out with Edward. But I knew he was never going to be truly himself. Like I said about the second book, I really loved Lucy's development. I loved where she went in this third book. I mean, I did, you know, from the beginning of the first book, her character, to the ending of this book, like, she was really, really strong, and I'm sad that she died. I know it helped Juliet finally, you know, make her own decisions, and she chose not to bring Lucy back, so it helped Juliet's development and her acceptance of herself and choosing her own path and all of that, but I was sad that Lucy died, although I don't know if her and Edward could have had a happily ever after, since he was brought back and not really himself. I'm just glad that Juliet finally accepted her own path, and I didn't really expect for Montgomery's secret to be that, you know, Dr. Moreau wasn't Juliet's father. Right before Montgomery told her, I was like, wait, I think I figured this out. Like, Moreau's not her father. But I didn't expect it before that. And I think it was a interesting thing to throw into it because, I mean, Juliet was freaking out about that the whole series. She just didn't know which path to choose. Is she like her father? Is she like her mother? Is she evil? Does she take after her father and his tendencies? And then to find out that he's not really her father, I think just totally threw her for a loop and was just like, what? Are you kidding me? I think Montgomery should have told her sooner. And so she could have, like, made this decision of choosing her own path sooner, because I did get kind of aggravated with her back and forth. She doesn't know who she is or what she's going to choose and all of that. I didn't expect Hensley to kill Elizabeth, although, I mean, I was never really attached to Hensley or Elizabeth, so I wasn't really sad, but it was a little bit shocking. But I really loved how this book explored the idea of immortality, and there was a line in there, I think Montgomery even said it, if you know that you can live forever, do you really even live? We all, as humans, have this, you know, knowledge that we are going to die and our time is limited, so we want to make that time as meaningful as possible and make the most of that time. Well, if you know that you're never going to die, then how does that play into it? And I thought that was such a cool idea. As far as the ending, how she ended up with Montgomery, like I've said from the beginning, I've always liked Montgomery. I do think he kind of went about his love and support for Juliet the wrong way by kind of telling her that he wouldn't accept her darkness and he wouldn't really accept her for who she was. I like their connection together, and I like that they've known each other for so long and they've kind of been through similar things. They've both experienced her father's darkness and his brutality, I guess, and I think they have a nice shared companionship and they do understand each other. Are they the perfect couple? Are they going to live 100% happily ever after? I don't think so. I mean, it leaves a lot of questions, like, can you have a happily ever after what they've been through, after what Juliet's been through? Can she really have a happily ever after? I don't think so, you know, and I mean, this book kind of left off on a happily ever after feel, and they were talking about Edward, and Juliet said that she hoped he would find everything he was looking for. Montgomery asked Juliet, did you find everything you were looking for? And she said yes. That was kind of a cheesy ending, but I'm glad they have each other. And Juliet even said, you know, she's just glad she has a companion. And I think if she were alone, she would kind of fall victim to her darkness again and, you know, dwell on the past. And I think Montgomery is a light in her life and he helps her to focus on the positive. So I'm kind of glad they ended up together, but I don't think they're perfect for each other. I do wish that the ending had like this last line that was kind of ominous and kind of questioning if they really lived happily ever after. I felt like the last paragraph was kind of weak. I mean, it was about how Juliet finally accepted herself and accepted her own path and all of that. This whole series is just so messed up, so I wish it had like one last ominous line, but it didn't. I just kind of wish it did. I forgot to even like talk about Jackal or Ajax, but I really liked his character and I love that he came back in the third book. I was so surprised. I did not expect that. I was just like, what? It's Ajax? Didn't expect it, but I loved it. And I have to say, I loved Balthazar throughout this whole series. I just thought he was such a wonderful character, especially in the end. He has such a good heart, such a kind heart, and I really loved his character. So I think that's all I have to say about this series. Sorry this video was so long. If you have anything to add, let me know in the comments. If you want to discuss anything spoilery about this trilogy, let's discuss in the comments. I want to hear what you have to say, your favorite parts. I really am interested to hear what you think about Juliet and Montgomery's relationship, especially at the end, because I feel kind of torn about it. I hope you enjoyed watching this, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Incantations.
kisses and curses, dripped in laughter, happily